and welcome back to the podcast that must not be named. I am Luke.
And I'm Melissa.
Welcome to our 5-chap recap of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, chapters 1 through 5. So I'm going to kick it over to a special guest summary of ours, Gretchen Rush, our wonderful The Podcast That Blogs writer, also co-host of mine on Hogwarts Radio. Gretchen, what just happened?
Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire begins with Chapter 1, The Riddle House, a chapter that has almost no mention of Harry and absolutely no recap of the last 3 books. In the village of Little Hangleton, there is the Riddle House, a creepy house where 50 years ago the 3 riddles dropped dead of mysteriously no cause. In the present day, the old housekeeper Frank overhears Voldemort and Wormtail discussing their plans to act once the Quidditch World Cup is over and Voldemort's devoted servant has returned. It's also revealed that they kidnapped and killed Bertha Jorkins, a Ministry of Magic witch. Voldemort kills Frank, and Harry wakes up at Privet Drive with his scar in pain. Chapter 2, The Scar, gives us that amazing exposition and recap of the last 3 books that we were waiting for. Harry doesn't know what to do about his scar, and he ends up writing a letter to his godfather Sirius, asking if he knows why it might be hurting, since the last time it hurt, it meant that Voldemort was near. Chapter 3, The Invitation, is about Dudley's diet. Dudley eats grapefruit for breakfast and rabbit food. Harry is eating cake, because he has good friends. Also, Harry receives an invitation to attend the Quidditch World Cup with the Weasleys. It's Ireland versus Bulgaria, and it's Monday night. In Chapter 4, Back to the Burrow, Harry goes back to the Burrow, since he finally learned how to use blue powder successfully. Mr. Weasley tries to teach Dudley manners, and Fred and George prank Dudley by making his tongue enormous. Chapter 5, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, reveals that Fred and George gave Dudley a Ton-Tong toffee, their own invention. Harry finally meets Bill and Charlie, and they live up to the hype. Percy's working hard to standardize cauldron thickness, and is in love with his boss, Mr. Crouch. We get hip to the Ministry gossip. Ludo Bagman is likable, but a terrible head of department. Bertha Jorkins has been missing for a month, but no one is surprised. There's another big event coming after the World Cup, and Bill's hair is very long. Plus, Fred and George send Percy poop.
So this is the point of the show where we ask you for listener feedback. We would love to hear from you guys. Please send us some tweets at Not Named Podcast. Send us a digital owl at the podcast that must not be named at gmail.com or not named podcast at gmail.com. We have both of those now. They go to the same place. We won't miss it. You please do send us comments and reviews on iTunes. Even if you're a PC user, download it to your desktop, add a comment onto iTunes. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. We would love to hear from you. Give us 5 stars, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And now we get into that part of our podcast where we welcome back our first-time reader, Riley. Hello there.
Hey, how's it going?
We are great. And special guest also in studio is Glenn from the podcast The Drinks and Knows Things, joining us as well. Hi, Glenn.
Hi, how we doing?
And we are here discussing the first 5 chapters of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So let's go ahead and kick it off. Riley, what did you think about the new book?
So far, best start of the series, I think. Best first 5 chapters. It didn't follow the traditional, this is a crappy, this is a Dursley chapter that Harry gets, beat up in, and then, he goes through, here's the run through of what happened last book. That happened a little bit, but we kind of got over that pretty quickly, and, the Riddle House, the first chapter started, and it gave us, kind of interesting mystery, to look into, and then the twist at the end where Harry wakes up and he was dreaming about some of it, it laid a lot of interesting plot points down, so definitely intrigued more so at the start of this book than I think I have been the other 3. So
yeah, I think that's entirely fair. I think the only one that comes close to stylistic is book 1, because that first chapter is all again out of Harry's purview. It's not to do with really Harry at all. It's all things around Harry. And this is the only the second time you have anything like that where it's a true kind of prologue chapter, more so than we have in the other 2 books. And I really love that first chapter. It's just so unexpected as to what happens there.
Yeah, because we always get dropped into, this is Harry Potter of 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old boy, and he's doing this, and his, uncle and aunts are angry at him all the time and his parents died. Like, we didn't get that right off the bat, which I appreciated. We got some other aspect of the story.
Yeah, it doesn't just jump into, oh, it sucks being with the Dursleys, and that's like the whole story.
So, speaking of that chapter, the Riddle House, did you have like a particular part that stood out or something that you really liked as you were reading through or were curious about?
I think so. I really liked the mystery, like I said, but the thing that really enticed me overall about the chapter was that the way it was written was like gradually transferred from the Muggle world into the Wizarding world without any type of like character or narrative switch. Like, it was just a gradually, like, bits and pieces of the Wizarding world would pop in to these Muggles' lives, and they would kind of pick up onto it, and then gradually more things would be added in, and then we kind of, at the end of the chapter, when we were in the conversation with Voldemort and Wormtail, we were already in, like, kind of engulfed in the Wizarding world, where it, like, without any big transition point, I don't know if that's weird to say, but I feel like in the past, at the beginnings, it's like, this is the Muggle world, this is some event happens, and now we're switched over, and we're looking at it from this perspective of the Wizarding world. But that didn't kind of happen in that first chapter for me.
Yeah, it was a very gradual release from the pub in Little Hangleton, and then we met Frank Bryce, and then we had his point of view, and then his point of view had all of these sputterings of magic, and then it ends with the magic.
Definitely. So that was really interesting, and it was, I don't know, like Luke said, unexpected, and I mean, we're seeing some kind of manifestation of Voldemort. I mean, they're talking about him not being powerful, but obviously he's laying plans and getting things started. So we're diving right into the action, it seems like, or at least getting hints at it.
He's still capable of doing some kind of curse, too, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's pretty powerful. I mean, for whatever small type of being he is, he still seems to be at least quite dangerous, even one-on-one.
Oh, yeah, it's frightening.
What did you think about the treatment of Frank Bryce by the small folk, the townsfolk?
I don't know. I think that it's kind of an easy explanation for Muggles to not understand something, so it doesn't make, like, I wouldn't look at that story in the news in the real world and be like, okay, it makes sense that nobody's like saying about anything about this Frank guy or this case, like, and everybody just like turning on him but letting him live there. Like, nobody would let that happen, even if he did get it, like, actually was innocent and was proclaimed innocent. I don't feel like anybody would let him live back there. Like, somebody would come back and not just ride their bike on the lawn. They'd probably take it into their own hands if they were really that passionate about it.
I think it's just like classic gossip culture. You know, that's really what they're, small town gossip. And I think she does a pretty good, JK does a pretty good job of bringing that touch in on just this one quick chapter. Like, hey, this is a thing. And it, like you're saying, like, they might think he is, but it's more just kind of like that town outcast as opposed to like, oh, we need to go lynch this guy because of, you know, there's no doubt that he did it. Like, it's a little different than like smoking gun in his hand. Like, it's just kind of conjecture that they believe that it's him, but can't really prove it.
But you know, if something else happened in that town, he would be their very first.
Oh, well, Frank's still around. Yeah,
bad guy, right? Like, Frank's still there. Anything else happens in that town, he's going to be their go-to person, and then there might be a lynching.
Yeah.
Biding their time.
So then Chapter 2 comes around, and did you think anything happened in Chapter 2?
I have one note, and I said, my note is Potter book, this is a Harry Potter book chapter. As in, like, this is a Harry Potter book introducing you to the fact that if you haven't read any of the other books, then you could potentially pick up here, and here's kind of what's going on. But it's not really anything substantial at all. And I think it's the least substantial Harry Potter book chapter so far. Like, in the other ones, there's kind of a little bit of other story going on. And this one is just like pretty much, yep, no, we're telling you what happened if you missed it. There's nothing else going on here.
And they also got the release of the PlayStation wrong.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Always been a problem for me.
I actually did have that note in there. I thought that was in Chapter 3, though.
No, that was Chapter 2.
Yeah, because he puts it in a letter. He puts it in a letter to Sirius where it's like, oh, and he broke his PlayStation. Now he can't play something Mutilators 3.
Mega Mutilators 3.
Mega Mutilators 3. Yeah.
Yeah, I had an interest. See, all that I thought it was in Chapter 3, but that's okay. I thought that was interesting because what year did this book come out?
Did it come out?
Like release, or is it set in?
Both, I guess.
So the chapter we're reading right now is set in August of 1994.
Okay.
PlayStations, thanks to my good brother Luke, did some research for us, and we found that PlayStations were originally released in Japan in December of 1994 and everywhere in September of 1995.
Yeah.
So we're just a little off.
That's okay. But I do have like an interesting thought about how we see it later on in the section, but the weird life that magic brings to the wizards as opposed to what a muggle's life would be. And like, you know, Arthur talking to Mr. Dursley about the plugs and all of the electricity and things like that. But like, it's just this weird thought about how all of the things that have come up in like technology in the recent years that are kind of magical in a sense would be completely useless to all of these wizards because they don't need a computer to do a lot of the things that they can do with their wand, which is just interesting. It just creates like a more simple life, I feel like, for a lot of those people.
But like still, like you'd still get bored. Like, I don't know, like even with magic, I don't know, there are some things that video games do that, like even having magic, I don't think my life would be that much more interesting.
Well, and Owl Post, I'm sorry, picking up a phone is a lot easier. And texting, they don't get to text?
That is streamlined. Slack.
Right?
Join our Slack team. It is streamlined.
I'm just waiting for Harry to get his first AOL account in book 7 or something.
Yeah, get that AIM. Get that instant messenger, man. And then he's gonna be on 4chan, and it's just gonna be all out the window at that point.
Harry Potter, the Dark Years.
Glenn in studio has a comment.
Real quick, like, could you imagine, like, kind of the Dursleys trying to use the phone as Harry's trying to get on the computer with AOL.
He's got the dial-up.
So, like, the whole, like, dynamic of him trying to use the computer and them trying to talk on the phone.
I'm trying to call my godfather. I'm trying to send him a message. Give me 10 minutes.
It's going to take you 10 minutes just to log in.
Yeah.
And then you're going to forget your username. You can't AIM him.
Welcome.
So funny.
You've got mail.
I feel like we've got Glenn's new job as the new you've got mail guy.
Get rid of the owl. You've got mail.
You can send your.
I'm your owl. I'm your owl now.
I'm your owl now.
Hey, congratulations! It's your 11th birthday. You're a wizard, and you've got 2 unopened messages in your inbox.
That's how they should send out the acceptance letters, right? Like Harry would not have missed it at that point. Like it's not going to be intercepted at that point.
Yeah, no, it's email, right? It's digital.
Yeah. But so then we get into chapter 3, which is where we have. So it's actually called. No, what's the actual chapter title on that?
The Invitation. The
Invitation. So this is where we get the letter to come and join them. What do you think of the of that chapter, and specifically the letter with all of the stamps on it?
That's just such like a Mrs. Weasley thing to do. Like, oh man, I hope we're doing it right. Like, I don't know what their culture is. Like, yeah, I heard you need stamps on them, so I'll make sure that we have enough. Like, it's very typical. Like, I laughed to myself because I was just like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So we also get a lot of Dudley's diet here, right? What are your thoughts on what how she brings to light Dudley's weight problem?
So I think of it in a way that she obviously isn't like crapping on the idea of somebody being overweight. I don't think that she's like focusing on that or trying to, pin that as like negative. But I think that it's kind of her getting back at the character of a bully and like, giving him a little bit of his own and giving him a little bit like of taking his power away. And I think that like, for a lot of kids reading this book at this time, like just seeing that maybe a bully's power is taken away from him at home or something like that, could be a good light in their eyes if they're dealing with somebody who's been like, been a bully to them at school or something. It's like maybe there's something else going on there. But I don't know if she was diving too deep into that, but that's just kind of how I thought of it.
Yeah, so JK gets a little bit put on blast for fat shaming of Dudley, and I think some of it's pretty accurate for sure, but it is one of those kind of crutches that some authors use. I mean, visual medias you can kind of get away with, showing someone in a certain demographic or even like a certain light. It just automatically, unfortunately, makes the audience think less of them, and it plays into the negative characteristics that people proactively assume on those characteristics. And so I don't think that JK personally is a fat shamer necessarily. I feel like it's kind of a crutch that some authors fall onto to use to show. It's been happening for a long, long time. Not saying that's right or a good thing at all. I just think this was written before a time where PC it was before social media, where a lot of these things have been brought even more to light. And so I'm trying to talk around a thing that I am not that experienced in, but I think you kind of see where I'm coming from, hopefully.
No, definitely. I think we're both of the opinion that probably there's some ample reason for that hate that she's got, or that lashback. Maybe that some of that does get justified a little bit, but at the end of the day, I don't think she's a hateful person or hates fat people, but I don't know her, and I don't think that she would put something like that into a book like this. So,
and at the end of the day, she's not using that as the key element of why he's a bad person. He's a bully, and he's also a total jerk to Harry, and he was raised that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just going to say, the reason he's a bully and a jerk comes explicitly from the way he was raised.
Absolutely. Yes. And so, I almost have apologist attitude towards Dudley at times, because he's exactly what he was raised to be. He is spot on. He's a great kid for what he's been raised as. He's nailing it. And that's kind of the problem, which is why Petunia is the worst.
She's the worst.
And it is fueled by Vernon.
But Petunia is the worst.
Yeah.
Worst.
I didn't mean to cut you off there, Riley. I apologize.
No, I didn't have much. I didn't have anything else to say. That's all I was.
So let's move on to chapter 4 then. You feel good on that?
Sure.
Let's talk about the Weasleys showing up, right? I mean,
yeah.
Take it away. What did you think of this chapter?
Oh, this was an awesome chapter, because I was thinking, as Harry was thinking, which way are they going to come? What way would they actually come? And the only thing that we have seen them travel by besides the car, I believe, was the flue powder. So before he mentioned anything, I was like, oh, do they have a fireplace? And then as I was reading, he was like, oh, there's sounds from the boarded up fireplace. And I was like, this is probably as bad as it could get, right? And how as perfect of a situation as you want. This is good comedy writing. You set up a situation where you don't want anything to be ruined, and you ruin all of it, and it's just awesome. And I love Mr. Weasley's unapologetic, ignorant, not ignorant in the sense of negatively ignorant, but actually ignorant in the idea that these people are trying to keep their house super clean for them, and they're already angry at him. And I don't know. I just love that he's so enveloped in his work in the Muggle world, but has absolutely no ideas of some of their a lot of their social interactions. It's just so funny.
Yeah, that's a really, really good pickup. Think back to last year where Hermione was taking Muggle studies, right?
Mm.
I wonder if Mr. Weasley actually took those classes, or if he just, I always have assumed he did. I think it makes sense that that's part of maybe where his fascinations come from, but maybe he kind of didn't, and has, after school, I'm really just brainstorming here, maybe he doesn't know these social interactions as well. He seems a little bit ignorant coming into this house this way, right?
Even if he did take those classes in school, it's the same kind of idea where if I would have taken a Japanese culture class 40 years ago, I don't know if it would be as nearly as effective as maybe a Japanese culture class today.
Totally fair.
We probably know way more now, and are a lot more
Well, think about it. If you took a Russian culture class in the current political climate, like it's
it's going to look a lot different.
Yeah, than it would what it did 100 years ago or 50 years from now when political affiliations aside, it has a very negative connotation right now.
Let's even think about a Russian class in the 50s would look a lot different than a Russian class in the late 90s, which is going to look a lot different than a Russian class right now because there are very different Russias there and very different American perceptions of Russia.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it could very well change, or it could be that he just wasn't interested in that as a kid and developed a hobby later in life, as some people do.
Are you talking about podcasting?
Like podcasting.
Hey, start at 27 and 37, and then it breeds how many other shows?
Right. It just keeps going.
That's for you, Melissa.
All right, how about chapter 5?
Yeah, that's a good chapter.
Good chapter. Get a lot of Dinner with the Weasleys.
Yeah. So we're back at the Burrow, which is not the name of the chapter, but we are actually in the Burrow in this chapter.
Back to the Burrow was a chapter last book, I believe.
Yes, this is Weasley Wizard Wheezes.
Back to the Burrow is the last chapter. It was chapter 4.
You're right. There you go. See? Someone knows this book better than I do.
Somehow we're getting schooled by the first-time reader, Luke. I think this is a problem.
He's only read these 5 chapters in his entire life, so...
okay. All right.
I will say I finished the last page the minute you called me, so that's probably why.
Incredibly fresh.
I'm still in Game of Thrones world over here.
Yeah, that's okay. So we got a look for the very first time at the Weasley family, which I thought was really cool, coming from a big family. And just like being around that and comfortable with that. I liked seeing the whole family and their dynamic together, like seeing who sits next to each other at the kitchen table. And, Charlie, George, and Fred were talking about Quidditch, and Percy was trying to be his dad, talking about, the Ministry of Magic and being Percy. And it was just a really cool scene for me. And we got a lot of information on the Wizarding World Cup, or the Quidditch World Cup, that we're going to be headed to. We have a lot of people talking about they want Ireland to win, but Victor Krum for Bulgaria is a really good player. And so being a sports head like myself, I get interested in that fantasy aspect of seeing the characters love their teams. I liked Bill being just cool. Be cool, Bill. Like, I just really like the fact that he's nothing else. He's just cool. He's got blue suede dragon boots and long hair and a fang earring.
Must cool Bill.
Yeah.
Who was your favorite Weasley?
Bill. Bill's cool.
Oldest typically are.
Well, that's not what my experience is, but...
Nice comeback. I appreciate that. Thanks.
It's usually the friends that are the cool ones.
Yeah. Glenn's the cool one.
Glenn's the cool one.
There you have it.
There you have it.
Polls are in.
Glenn for the win.
So yeah, like we do see the full Weasley family as a kind of a cohesive unit. Like the first time we have this full portrait of everybody, right? And I don't know. I'm with you. It's a really, really cool thing for us to experience. And like, yeah, we came from a big family, but we've also been friends of people who are in big families. And looking at it from Harry's perspective, or like Hermione here also, like, how well do you think they fit into the group when everyone's around? Because again, also coming from a big family, like, yeah, like you have really good friends and things, but when your siblings are around, like sometimes it's hard not to accidentally be shoved to the side. I mean, or as an in-law or, a significant other. I think that still sometimes happens, which is, I think, just part of it, unfortunately, until
there's enough in-laws that they just band together.
See, right. And then the tug of war is fair.
Yeah. So on like Hermione and Harry fitting in, I think that they're not having a problem with it because of what the leaders of the family, Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, do when they get there. They don't separate themselves out. I think, and so it's just my own opinion. I think when friends come over into a big family setting like that, it's on the leaders of the family, it's on the parents to make them feel as if they're a part. If that's the dynamic they're going for, and here it's kind of what it is. when Mrs. Weasley's barking out dinner orders to everybody, she tells Harry to pick up forks and knives, just like Ron. She doesn't exclude him for that, but also she tells him that she'll go pick up his stuff when they're at game or when they're gone at Diagon Alley. So he's not losing out on the benefit of being in the family either. So I don't know that necessarily they're struggling to fit in there, like, while they're there. Maybe in certain conversations it could be hard, but it didn't seem like, at least in that chapter, that any of that was going on.
I agree. And the real worry that I have is Harry has the famous Harry Potter name and the Quidditch player name. So, like, one of my gripes with this chapter is Harry doesn't hang out with Charlie enough for, like, connecting on Quidditch. Like, I just feel like he would gravitate towards that character more so than just being, oh, Bill is cool, and that's kind of it. We've already heard about Charlie in book 1.
And he took Charlie's seeker job.
Right. He literally took that place.
Right.
Charlie graduated out the year before Harry started. Just so you know that. So I feel like they would connect, like, real quick, right?
Yeah, that is unfortunate that didn't happen.
And maybe it does, like, off screen, or maybe it's going to happen upcoming. I just feel like Harry would have focused on Charlie more so than being surprised by Bill.
But if you notice, like, I think if you look at it from the perspective of somebody new walking into that big setting, it can also be kind of intimidating. Like, cool to watch, but I don't even know how to engage necessarily with these people that I don't have a good relationship with. So I'm going to defer to my comfort zone, which for Harry is Ron, Hermione, and the twins. And if you notice, that's kind of who he sticks with. Sometimes Percy, but it's Percy. So, like, you can only do that for so long. But he sticks within his comfort zone and watches the others, but doesn't really engage because this is a first time and it's maybe not uncomfortable, but it's just a new thing. And so maybe a little hesitancy on his part.
I think
the real thing that I was trying to get at is Harry, like, he'll be fine. Hermione seems like that she could be easily pushed aside, but there's also the younger sister, Ginny, involved that is kind of her savior because she gets pushed aside from what we can tell her whole life too, right? So hopefully they get along well. I don't know. All right, Melissa, do you have some burning questions for our first-time reader?
I do have some burning questions. Are you ready, Briley?
Yes, I am.
All right, here we go. Burning question number 1. Way back in chapter 1, Frank started talking about how he's going to leave after he overheard Voldemort and the snake talking. Mm-hmm. Do you think, even if the snake hadn't seen Frank, would Frank have been able to get away given his bad leg?
Sorry to interrupt. No, he wouldn't have. No chance. I thought that the minute he said that, and no, he was like, oh, I'm gonna, what did he, the word was, I'm going to, like, sneak, it wasn't sneak, it was something out of the house, and my instant reaction was, no, you are not, like, there's absolutely no way you, like, are gonna get out of the house. No, simple, no chance.
Okay, alright, question number 2.
Final answer, are you going with no?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Do you need to phone a friend, like that?
That's so funny that you asked that. I was, like, ready for that question.
Nice. Okay, good. That's the first time that's ever happened.
I think so.
Question 2. Where do you think Dumbledore goes for holiday? For vacations.
Dumbledore. I don't know, and I don't think it's some like beach vacation anywhere. Honestly, I don't feel like I know enough about the character yet, but I would imagine he's studying something, making something, or, like, on a quest for something.
Can I say that was pretty close to what I think my answer was? Like, he's probably just hanging out at the castle where there's actually no distractions for once, and just, like, getting some work done.
Yeah.
All right. Question 3. I wasn't prepared for. Here we go. How many stamps do you think Mrs. Weasley managed to fit onto the envelope?
All right. Well, here. Hold on. How long was the letter? The letter was like a page.
Sure.
So let's say 8 by 11 page.
Sure.
Typical stamp is about how many inches long? 2?
What, you think a 1 by 1? It's probably a 1 by 1.
So if my
oh, you're cutting up there, Riley. You're breaking up.
Calculations are correct.
Hang on.
Carry the 1. probably a lot of stamps. Hello.
Yeah, it's a little choppy coming in.
Hello?
Yep, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys perfectly.
Okay.
There you are.
Go
That
ahead
sounds
and-
better.
Yeah, that sounds better now.
Okay.
Go ahead and go
Cool.
through your figuring out how many are on there.
So I said, if my calculations are correct, I carry the one, probably just about a lot of stamps. Just a lot. Maybe 60. Probably more. I don't know. I'm going to go with 68. 68 stamps.
That is a very precise number. I'm proud of you.
Yep.
Good job. All right, question 4. Question 4 is, maybe, would you have eaten the toffee had you found it on the floor?
No, I don't like toffee. I don't really like toffee flavored things.
Okay, well, so then your tongue would be safe.
Yeah.
All right, last question. Maybe. Here we go. How cool is Bill really?
Bill's really cool. He's really cool.
Can you
he's got-
quantify his coolness?
On a scale of 1 to cool.
Like,
Like
So,
Miles Davis. If peeing your pants is cool, consider me Miles Davis. That's the grossest thing I've ever heard.
I feel like Bill is about as cool as my oldest brother.
Okay.
That's how I imagine it.
I can, the perception of the oldest brother from a younger brother's perspective that isn't a year and a half younger than him, I can get that.
I guess.
yes.
Yeah, I think that's tracking for the people that know.
Yeah, it's not a good answer for the people who don't know, but my oldest brother is really cool. So if that helps you out at all, Bill's really cool. Really.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the reason, I think that was my question, right, Melissa?
Yes, it was.
And it's basically like, what is Harry's real perspective on what cool is? Like, I feel like his perspective is a little skewed, and so
A bit.
that's why I was like, that's really where I'm coming from.
Here's my answer for that then. Like, for me, I'm the kind of guy who I like to play, like, fantasy video games, not for the story, but because I want to get the coolest magical items in the game and be the strongest. And Bill rolls in with, like, you know, dragon shoes that maybe make him fly or something, and a fang earring that probably gives him, like, a +2 hit points or something, you know? And, like, so he's got some
And
cool
+3
gear on him.
modifiers against ghosts.
Yeah, definitely. And so he's got some cool gear working with him, and he's got long hair, which is a plus. He just seems like if you're gonna be cool in the wizarding world, you're gonna be head boy Bill Weasley cool, and like I feel like he's the standard, you know.
By which all other Weasleys shall be judged.
No,
Or all other kids and coolness levels.
all other cool prospects.
One quick thing that we didn't really touch on is what you just brought up with Bill Weasley being head boy and how Harry always expected him to be more like just an older version of Percy,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I think that's pretty reasonable. Like, what did you think about Bill before we get his description here? Did you have like an image in your head? Did this thwart it? Or were you just, it was blank and you didn't really think about it?
So we knew Bill worked for Gringotts, correct?
Mm-hmm.
We knew he worked for the bank.
Yep.
I didn't really have much of a picture in my head other than the fact that he was a big enough personality and a big enough character to make Ron feel shadowed by. Like,
Sure, yeah.
not that Bill specifically was the one that Ron needed to live up to, because a lot of that was like Percy and him seeing Percy be the head boy, but just the concept of that Weasley children are successful, and aside from his, like, I just think it had to be somebody who was like a big personality, or at least like a great wizard, and that's all I thought about previously to this. So,
Okay, fair enough.
All right. So, Riley, now we get into what was your favorite line?
oh man, my favorite line. There was a couple ones in here I had to choose from.
You can have honorable mentions
But-
if you'd like.
No, my favorite one, it was pretty easy, and we talked about it a little bit when we were mentioning like the JK's talking about like being put on blast for fat shaming and stuff, and I talked about how it was because like she's pointing out the fact that he's a bully and trying to give him some of his own, not a good outlet to use, but I can understand it. But my favorite line comes on page 53, when Mr. Weasley's talking to Fred and George, and saying like, you shouldn't be mistreating muggles on my own sons, blah blah blah. I've been working in muggle relations. George says, we didn't give it to him because he's a muggle, and George says, no, we gave it to him because he's a great bullying git. Like, he got what he deserved. Like, come on, Dad, that's fair, right?
And then, like, they followed up with, right, Harry? And Harry's just like, yeah, Mr. Weasley, he's kind of the worst.
Yeah, he's kind of just the worst, actually.
It's funny, they looked to Harry for, like, confirmation, and Harry just like, yeah, I mean, he sucks.
Yeah, terrible person, terrible people, totally fine, justified. Like, even if they were wizards, we would do this to him.
Yep.
All right, who is your favorite character?
So this one was tough because we had majority time spent with Harry. And the only other characters that we got were the people in the intro story, which we didn't spend much time with because it was just the first chapter, the Dursleys, and then the rest of the Weasleys and Hermione. So for my previous calculation of favorite character, a lot of it has been action based and who puts towards the plot, but not a lot of people did that, aside from Harry, really. The only person that I think aided the plot well and was on Harry's team and was a good, interesting character was Arthur Weasley. I mean, he came in and mucked up that situation pretty badly with the Dursleys, and he was trying to be nice, but at the end of the day, he got Harry out of the Dursleys' house and into the Wizarding World, which, as you guys know, is my deepest desire for every first section of 5 chapters in the book, is to get out of Dursleys and into the Wizarding World. So Arthur Weasley pretty much made that happen.
So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because
it has spent the time.
Every book you've been, your first time readership has been a little apprehensive or negative towards the beginning of the book. Like you just said, getting to the Wizarding World stuff. Like you're like, yeah. I don't care. Like it's the same thing over and over again. When we started this book, I looked to Melissa and I said, I am so excited to get Riley's perspective on these 5 chapters to open the book, because I think they are so much better. Like with the Riddle House chapter, I think it's a total departure.
Fresh air.
It is. And even like the Arthur coming in chapter 4 and like the chapter 3, the letter, like I feel like there's a lot more going on, and it's lighter and more levity brought to it, and not just dour, it sucks being here type stuff.
Definitely. For me, I wish that the only change that I would have made is like in that chapter 4 chapter where they spend the whole time like messing around and like Arthur's trying to fix the situation, and then they're like showcasing that the Dursleys are afraid, and finally Harry gets out. The thing that I wish that would have happened instead was like we just would have gotten and the Dursleys let him go and they picked up here, and let's have a chapter of talking to Bill and Charlie for Harry or something like that. Like, but it again, it wasn't bad at all. I enjoyed it. So
I'm glad you feel that way, because like I said, I was excited for you to have these 5 chapters. I think right now, if I had to pick, I totally agree that chapter 2 is one of the most pointless chapters in all of the books.
Yeah.
It's
the Norbert?
Yes, I do think so. Nothing happens. Literally nothing happens. Like if I had to pick, it's
That's
kind
not
of
true. He gets a headache.
All right, I say corrected. And he writes a letter.
I'm not saying it's a lot. I'm not saying it's worth a whole chapter.
He thinks about writing 3 letters and then writes 1.
And then he pictures people.
Yeah, true story. Well,
right.
First time reader Riley, we love that you're going through with us, and we love that this book started off a little bit, it seems like on a higher note than the last couple.
Oh, for sure. I mean, well, book 3 started off pretty well. I mean, that's actually something I meant to ask you on. Like, so the exposition that all of it happens really in book 2 or in chapter 2 here, right? Like the heavy, hardcore. Hey, I'm literally just info dropping on you. And I do think that book 3 did a lot smoother. I think for that aspect, book 3 was much, much better at that than book 4 was. I 100% agree, but for me, I agree on the integration aspect for sure. Book 3 did a better job, but like I opened up to chapter 2, and when I read through, I look ahead and see how long each chapter is, just to know what I'm getting into before I start reading it. It's a very long time, and I didn't really feel too bad about it. So all in all, great first 5 chapters. I'm excited to read the rest of it.
Awesome. Well, we can't wait until we see you again in, 6 weeks?
Yep, right?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean,
Sure.
It is 6 weeks on release schedule. Riley, you're really doing 4.
Yep, tentative 6.
4. It's fine. 4.
No, I know.
I gotta stay
I
on
want
top
these
of
podcasts to be evergreen, so act like we're recording the day before.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see you
We'll
in
see you again
6 weeks.
on recorded information in 6 weeks.
Yep.
The podcast listener
Look at
will
us.
hear from you again in 6 weeks, and we can't wait for them to hear you. There
Yep.
you go. All right, thanks, Riley.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
And now we get to join our target audience perspective. Lorelai, welcome back.
Hello.
How are you now?
I'm good.
Yeah? What did you think of our first 5 chapters of Goblet of Fire?
Really funny and just nice.
Yeah. How so? Like, what really stands out to you in these 5 chapters compared to some of the other things that we've seen?
Like, yeah, the beginning was not that, fun. But, during the end, when he's in the burrow, it was just nice and peaceful. With the filling dinner, it was very nice.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. It's a lot more homey, like it's a lot more comfortable, even though we're with the Dursleys for a little while. But it ends up being in a homey, more comfortable spot than I think some of the other books have left off in.
Yeah.
So let's talk about chapter 1 a bit. We have kind of a departure from other books, right? It's kind of in a totally different place, totally different people.
Yeah.
What'd you think of our time in Little Hangleton?
Okay, one of the questions that I had was, so Voldemort was talking about, my faithful servant will come soon. Who is his faithful servant? I don't know who his faithful servant is.
Well, what a good question we can't answer for you.
So next question.
We really want to, but you're spoiler free.
Yeah, you need to ask to be in the unrestricted section to ask that kind of question.
Yeah, and we haven't opened that door yet tonight. However, I will tell you, it will be answered eventually.
In podcast life, within the year.
By this time next year, you will know.
Oh, yay.
You will have forgotten that you asked, but
Oh,
you will know.
I'll save the date.
I do like that you caught that, though, because I know the first time I read it, I didn't really, I just sort of blurred through that. It was like, oh, okay, faithful Daisy. I don't even remember thinking about that, so that was a good catch on your part.
It didn't come up on Riley's at all.
No, he didn't notice it.
So it's nice job, target audience perspective. Better than the first time watcher or reader.
Wrong show.
Thank you.
So what were your thoughts on Frank Bryce?
Frank.
Mm-hmm. The Muggle, the old man Muggle that Voldemort.
That guy.
Yeah.
I thought I understood him. He was after the war. He's gonna be grumpy. He would probably like the silence, and because all those stuff that you hear in the war, not great. And I just get him, but why? I don't know why he would just get another job. I feel like that would just be boring. Doing that your whole life, just gardening.
Maybe he likes to be a horticulturalist gardener. Yeah. Big fancy word here. That was
it was very lemony snicket of you. A horticulturist, which here means gardener. That's entirely the feeling that I got from that.
Excellent. That's what I'm here for. How many different genres can we bring in? It's totally fine.
Oh, it's all the same genre, basically. But so then we get into chapter 2, right? So this is where Harry is thinking about writing letters to his best friends, and then thinks about writing a letter to or not even to Hagrid. He thinks about writing one to Dumbledore, and then he actually writes one to Sirius. What did you think of this chapter here?
I thought it was very smart of him to go to Sirius, because Sirius. Yes, Dumbledore knows what he's talking about. Well, Sirius has, not really been in that position, but I feel would know what to do instead of just, trying to fix the problem, kind of.
It's a little bit more... Oh, sorry, Melissa, go for it.
You're fine. No, I was going to say, do you think it was a better choice than Ron and Hermione?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because then the whole year of school, they'd just be like talking about it and be like, oh my gosh.
They do a lot of talking, don't they?
Yeah, I know. It sucks.
I feel like they. And I think.
else.
Go for it. It seems like they kind of put some peer pressure on Harry, and that's kind of what he's getting at, right? Like either Ron's downplaying it or Hermione's like overdoing it, and he's just like, it's kind of a thing, but is it that big of a deal?
He needs the in between,
right? And Dumbledore might just flat out be like this is the answer, and that's not always the right thing that someone needs to hear, right?
Yeah, sometimes they just need the right direction to it, which is why Sirius is here.
Yeah, I think you're hitting it on the head here that Sirius is the right person for Harry to talk to, and because he can he's an adult. I mean, honestly, that's kind of part of why it doesn't work so well with Harry and Hermione is they're a little bit more one track, and Sirius is a little more
life perspective to be able to look and see the bigger picture than like a 13, 14, 15-year-old.
Yeah.
Their life experience limits.
Mm-hmm. So the one question that I had here was, why doesn't he think about asking Hagrid? Did you think about that, or do you think it's just Sirius? He hit on Sirius, and that was just the right answer, and so he just went with it, and that was the end of the thought process?
I didn't really think about Hagrid. I thought he was just this like lovable guy that like wouldn't not say that he wouldn't know about it, but like wouldn't be the right path to knowing about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like he's not a guy I'd go to for advice.
Yeah.
He doesn't strike me as that kind of character anyway.
No, he's just a guy to know about animals, and that we all like them.
Good enough. So
did you have any other thoughts on Chapter 2 before we moved on there?
No, not really.
Okay, because there wasn't much to it.
Nope.
So then we roll into Chapter 3, which is where we get Mrs. Weasley's letter, right? And the Dursleys are feeling a little put out by
hungry.
The mailman. Yeah, they're hungry. The mailman's laughing at them for the letter. So yeah, a lot of diet talk, a lot of letter talk. What'd you pick up from this chapter?
In this chapter, when Miss Weasley says, "P.S. I hope I put like enough stamps on," and then Vernon just like shows Harry, I feel like I could just like in my head just see his face, just like, you see this? Like, the postman noticed that, and I just thought it was really funny. Just like seeing his face, just like, hello.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, we lost Luke.
Luke?
I'm here. I'm listening. I was
He
refilling.
ran away.
I both ran away.
I was listening the whole time.
We believe you.
I literally readjusted my headphone extension cord so I could walk around the table to get a refill on my box wine.
She's feeling a little abandoned. It's okay.
Lorelai, I apologize. I'm quite literally the worst. You can always know that.
Well, you're not Snape.
Yo, yeah, I am not Snape. If anyone thinks so, please let me know. I will rectify that. Snape is the worst.
Snape. Severus Snape.
Dumbledore. Hermione. All right. So,
Chapter 4.
Yeah, let's talk about Chapter 4.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Chapter 4, when they come get him from the Dursleys, and the unfortunate incident with the like walled up fireplace.
Yeah.
And the Tun Toffee and Fred and George. Any thoughts on that particular chapter?
When Harry like talks about his last like sight of the
the Dursleys
and them and all of them, I just thought that was hilarious. I just started laughing. Like Vernon like throwing stuff at Mr. Weasley, and like Dudley just like his tongue just flailing around everywhere.
Well, and Petunia laying on top of Dudley like that's going to do something.
Yeah, I just thought it was really funny.
So you like that last image?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think her laying on top of Dudley would have accomplished anything?
No.
Why not?
So she's just laying on him. Like, will that do anything to solve about his tongue? No. Like, it won't help with anything.
But, I mean, they're muggles. Like, they don't know, right? I mean, they think about it taking, like taking a bullet. Like, oh, if I stand in front of it, it hits me. It kind of the self-sacrifice. Spells don't seem to work that way at times.
But, like, what would you do? You wouldn't sit on him and be like, oh, that'll stop something.
I mean,
I don't know.
What else could you do? I mean, turn him around and say, hey, take your shot. I mean, that's not really good either, right? I mean, it's the least that Petunia's kind of small-mindedness can come up with, right? I mean, it's unfortunately the only thing she can think of, as opposed to just being decent to this person that's here to literally help them with one of their issues, that being Harry in the house, right? I mean, like, this solves their problem. Like, let's just get Harry out of the house, and then we don't have to worry about it for another 11 and a half months.
Yeah. So then we go to the burrow and we have the big family dinner, which you had mentioned earlier on how you really liked that part.
Mm-hmm. I really liked that part.
Because
I really liked that part because we were coming back home from Ohio today, and I was
Iowa.
That place, Iowa, and like I really not really missed home. I just kind of missed home, so like that made me want to go home. And
So it's a very like feeling of peace and at home and safety, and just even though it's not necessarily Harry's home, it sure feels like it to him.
Yeah, I just
okay.
It's literally being welcomed into the family that chose him kind of feeling. Is that what you're getting out of it?
Yeah.
And I think it's a pretty good, pickup. It's the family that he chose, and guess what? They chose him too, and it just fits. And that's something special. And it's really nice because he's never had anything like that. He's wanted it, but he's also grown up knowing that it's completely impossible with the Dursleys. And like, how lucky was he at the platform of 9 3/4 the first time he went there, right? I mean, that he overhears Molly Weasley talking to the twins at the time, and like it's just turned into this scene, right? This whole chapter is basically what that scene has turned into for his real life, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty special.
Yeah.
Look at that face.
Do it again.
No, I already did it twice.
No, I already did twice. It was good. I'll screen cap it. I'll put it as the album art for this chapter.
Oh,
nice. It'll be out in the iTunes sphere forever.
Oh, yeah.
Smile. It's so great. There it is. That's my kid. All right. We're going to go ahead and get into your 5 burning questions. Are you ready? Yeah. Question number 1. Would Frank have been able to get away before the snakes saw him? Do you think Frank would have been able to get away even with his bad leg?
No. Because the snake was like already coming up, and like even his legs like didn't want to move. So and like his leg was like killing him. That's why he woke up, and that's why he saw like the fire. And like I think he wouldn't have been able to run away.
All right. Question 2. Part of this chapter was Harry trying to decide who he was going to write to, and one of his options was Dumbledore, and he was like, oh, Dumbledore's probably on vacation. And then he wonders, where does Dumbledore go on vacation? So I ask you, where does Dumbledore go on summer vacation?
I honestly, when he said that, I thought of the same thing that he thought of. Him just like putting on sunscreen over his cloak, and then just hopping into a pool and just like swimming with his luscious beard just everywhere.
His long crooked nose with sunscreen all over it.
Yeah. All over his crooked nose.
From the perspective of
just like floating on top of the surface.
From the perspective of a swimmer.
Yeah.
How much drag would his long beard really cause? I mean, right? I mean, that's like the worst.
That would cause like 2 minutes of like extra drag.
2 minutes. Yeah, it's not necessarily the most aerodynamic
of attire. He might be a good backstroker, though.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Or like him just doing the backstroke in his hat. His hat's just like
it's his break point, like, right? It's like a reverse unicorn, right? It's his break point.
He's just pretending to be a unicorn.
Yeah. Or Narwhal. He's in the water.
Yeah,
that's true.
Narwhal, shout out.
Narwhal's a real thing. Real thing. Does not look like a real thing.
It is a real thing.
I know.
They're weird.
It is weird.
All right. Question number 3. How many stamps do you think Mrs. Weasley managed to fit on the envelope?
What's like a good size of an envelope?
Okay.
Probably like 30.
Okay.
So she like might have like put them around except for that like little square on the top, and then like put more on top of the other ones. And was like, I gotta make sure I have enough.
All right. Question 4. I forgot what it is. Hold on. I got to look at it. Question number 4. Would you have eaten the toffee?
If I was that hungry and like, if I ate everything else, which I'm a swimmer, it would probably go by really quickly. Yes, I would have eaten it. Like, if that was my last thing to eat, yeah, I would eat it.
All right. You heard it here, folks. Teenagers totally going to eat the toffee.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. Last question. Question 5. How cool is Bill really?
He is awesome. He has an earring with a tooth on it. And I thought that was really freaking cool. And I thought what Harry thought, I thought he was just going to be this nerdy, Percy guy. But no, he's pretty cool. He's chill.
All right. Now it's time to get into your superlatives. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
What was your favorite line?
Harry found, he thought it
Keeps going away.
It was a better time to call anyone anyway. Don't be. When his own son Dudley has finally achieved what he'd been threatening to do since the age of 3, and because became wider than he was taller.
I love that you're putting it in the chat so it keeps coming up with a video.
Because we didn't have a copy of the book, and she's like, Mom, you gotta send it to me.
Where's your copy of the book?
Well, but then, look at me. We're being resourcely.
You made it happen.
Right? Right. We figured it out. It was fine.
I'm confused. Where's your copy? Why do you not have, multiple copies of the book?
I only have one copy of... That's not true. I have 2 copies of this book, but one is in her room somewhere.
You have one right here.
That's my second copy. So, yeah. She was having...
Technically mine now.
Well, that's your second copy? That looks worn out. That's how you know. That's how you know we're avid rereaders.
Well, also that I used to be a classroom teacher, and I had lots of Harry Potter copies who were not as well cared for.
Yeah, that's fair.
My own.
I was going to say, it doesn't look as well cared for. Ooh, the title page, the title, the first 60 pages.
It's so painful.
This is sacrilege what you're doing here on air.
Okay, last question for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Who was your favorite character?
My favorite character was Ginny. Always at the perfect moment, at the perfect time.
And why was that?
Because when Bill and his mom were talking about the earring, she was at the perfect moment. It was just like, I think it looks cool. And I was like, yes. And when Harry, Ron, and Hermione wanted to talk about Sirius, she was at the perfect moment and made it super awkward. And that's why she was awesome. She made it
awesome.
Awkward. Yes. That's why I liked her.
All right. Well, Lorelai, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
I want my headphones back.
No.
And we will talk to you when we do our recap for chapters 6 through 10.
Yay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Do I hang up now?
Yeah, hang up now. Get out. Thanks, Lorelai. So that wraps us up for our 5-chap recap episode. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at NotNamedPodcast. Send us a digital owl to notnamedpodcast@gmail.com. Check out thepodcastthat.com for information on all of our shows and all of the ways you can help support our shows. Please start listening to Not Named Podcast on Radio Public. It's free, easy to use, and helps listeners like you find and support shows like ours. When you listen to Radio Public's Android or iOS app, everyone benefits. Subscribe, like, rate, leave comments on iTunes and YouTube. Our special Imaginary Legion patrons will now have access to the unrestricted section for this 5-chap recap. The other super special thing about our unrestricted sections this book are we are planning on having special guests joining us in the spoiler-filled discussions. So check out patreon.com/stayimaginary for access to that episode now. Just join at the $3 level or higher, and you will have access to all of our patron-exclusive episodes. If you are a non-patron or a first-time reader, we will see you next week when we discuss Chapter 6, The Portkey. Stay imaginary. Thanks.